All right, today we are talking about the top 5 things that you are going to love and hate about the new Cinema 4D R25. Well, maybe not so new because R26 is just around the corner, but there was such a jump from R24 to R25 that I felt that it's important to get out there to see what you're going to like and what you're not going to like. Now, of course, everyone's different, so this is just my list of what I've come across, of things that I find are great and things I find are super annoying. I made the decision to make the switch in the middle of a job because I figure it's the best time to do it, right? It's you're gonna get thrown into the fire and you're gonna learn the hard way. So I said, why not? Let's do it. So these are my top 5 things that I love and hate about the new R25 so far. All right, so let's do the things that I hate first, right? Because I like getting the bad news out of the way. And the first thing that I really don't like about R25 is that it crashes a lot. And I mean a lot. Now, it took me a while to get my setup right to where I could kind of minimize the crashing. And what I've determined is that the crashing, at least for my setup, is based on the UI, right? It's something that is happening with the UI that has changed with Inside Cinema. Obviously, a lot's changed. As you can see, it's completely different. They've obviously changed a lot from the ground up. And because of that, there's bugs. I was getting issues where I was switching between windows like this, and as I'm switching between windows, the window would just get really big and fat and stretched, and it would just mess up. And basically, once it goes like that, there was no turning back. So I tried to use the program a little while ago, a few months back, and I said, forget it. Like I can't do this. It crashes too much. And what I determined was actually doing it is, now this doesn't really necessarily apply to anyone that's not a Redshift user, but the Redshift render view is actually the thing that was kind of causing it to crash. It just wasn't playing nice with it. Normally what I have is I have my render view here and it's connected, right? It's connected to my main viewport window. And for some reason, when I switch between this and this and this, it just didn't like it. So lo and behold, I actually got a second monitor and it has fixed the problem. So it crashes less now. It still does crash, but just be warned, it crashes a shitload when I first started using it, and it drove me nuts, almost to where I didn't even use it. All right, so that's the first thing. Number 1 you're gonna hate is that it crashes a lot. Number 2, and probably the biggest, most glaring, obvious thing, is everything is rearranged, right? Everything has changed. Buttons where you used to know where they were are now on the other side. Everything that were visual cues to you have now changed. Not all the icons, but a lot of the icons have changed. They've gone for a more kind of muted, more designy look, right? And I like it. It's nice. It's pretty. But it's a little more difficult to kind of navigate your way around easily. You know, if we come in here, we have a lot of icons that are exactly the same color. So as a quick visual cue, it's difficult to really understand what it is. Whereas before, although before they look like child's toys, they did work well. And so you'll see that we just have a lot of more minimalistic designs here. Now, the number 2 thing that I hated when I first started using it was everything is rearranged, right? All the buttons where you used to know where they were are now in different spots. You now have all your modeling tools up here. You have all of your, I guess, widgets or whatever you want to call them, all your deformers and everything. Pretty much all your buttons that used to be up here are now over here. So your eye, your muscle memory is just a little bit less. It takes a little bit of rearranging your brain on just where things are. So you're gonna, out of the gate, you're gonna be a little frustrated because things just aren't where you remember them being. And it's changed, and it's changed for the better, I will say. It's a hate because it is a frustration, but ultimately, as we get to the likes, you'll see I do believe that it's, in the long run, a good feature that's been added. All right, so the third thing you're going to hate, and you've probably heard a lot of talk about, is the content browser is gone. Now, if you never used a content browser before, it was basically a mini version of your File Explorer, Windows Explorer, whatever you use. It was a way to see your files, and you could get like little, image previews of your C4D files, HDRIs, all that. It was great. It was awesome. So now what they have is they have something called an asset browser. Now, the asset browser, it's hard for me to say if it's good or bad because, to be fair, I haven't really used it that much. But I will say when I have used it, I'm like, get me out of here really quick because it's slow, it's clunky, and I don't like it. So to get to the asset browser, it's basically this button right here, and you click it, and this is another thing I don't like. Watch this. When I click this, how long it's going to take. Okay, so it goes through this thing, and I have pretty decent internet here. It goes through this thing where it like has to like load everything up. And to be fair, that was actually much quicker than it normally does. Normally it takes like, I mean, look at here, even these are taken, it just takes time to kind of go through stuff. But what I was saying is normally it takes like triple that time when you first load it up. So it might be because I've already had this project open. I'm not sure. So the asset browser basically has like a lot of, they're constantly updating elements and resources that you can use. And it's like the new place for your libraries now too, which is another thing that I don't like, which is your libraries are gone. So you have all these, you have your old libraries, and basically now they're gone. So you have to go to create and then import legacy library, and then it does a conversion. And then it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't work. So for me, it's like you kind of just have to accept the fact that some of this stuff is gone, because I converted a few libraries and some of them worked and some of them didn't. So this is kind of a bummer to me that the content browser is gone, because you can no longer come in here and I can't just grab a file. Now what I have to do is I have to open up Adobe Bridge or something like that and drag it in from there, just to even see like an HDRI or anything like that. All right, so that is the third thing that you are not going to like about the new R25. Now, the fourth thing that you're not going to like, potentially, is everything kind of looks the same, right? There's no real good visual cues of what is what. Like, of course, this is a light. I get that. But it's like once you're in here, it's very minimalistic and everything's the exact same color. Now, I love simple minimalist design. I think it's great, but I do find that although this is prettier than the last version, it takes me like 3 or 4 extra seconds to just find what I'm looking for. Because it used to be that you would have, I can't remember what the old ones look like. These feel more familiar, but it used to be that you would have strong visual differences, and now everything is just kind of, yeah, well, obviously it's the same color, but it's also just, it's less recognizable. So things are just a little bit too similar, I think, right? Like it took me a while to kind of get used to this, right? This is point mode, this is edge mode, and this is your polys, and then obviously you have, your object mode, etc. But until you kind of get used to this, especially this one, this is the anchor point. If you want to move your anchor point, it's just, yeah, it doesn't really scream anchor point to me. Like to me, this is like a move tool or something is what this personally feels like. And maybe it was like this in the previous version. I haven't like studied everything apple to apple, but for whatever reason, it's just more difficult for me to figure out. But I've gotten used to it. Now, the last thing that you're going to probably be annoyed about is, just things that were very quick are now going to take you longer. And it's going to take, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's going to take you a little bit longer to find what you're looking for. For instance, I still cannot find where the center mesh access, where they put it, right? Because they rearrange stuff again. And this is kind of what we were talking about before, but it's like my muscle memory was, okay, if I want the center of, if I want to make a center point, if I want this access to be in the center, I would just go to mesh and then access center. It's not there. And to be honest, I haven't found it because I've been so busy working that I just said, screw it. And so what I did is I went Shift C and then I would go access center. And then I started using it so much that I actually just made a shortcut, which is Shift A, and then I can just hit execute, whatever. But the point being is that stuff like that, it's a nuisance. It's a total nuisance because I don't know where it is in this menu, and honestly, I don't really care. Like I care, but I got to get my job done. So I do workarounds. So those little frustrations, they kind of do build up over time of like, what the fuck? Like, where is this? And how do I get there? And so it's something that just takes time to get used to. So that's the kind of the short list of the 5 things that I found to be really a nuisance, and you could say I hated at the beginning of using R25. Now, having said all that, there's so much more, in my opinion, to love about it than there is to hate. That's the good news. So if you're able to make it through the hate section, there's a lot to love. And the first thing to love is the space, man. They really, really made it just really nice, especially if you just have one monitor, to work with the space that you have. Okay, so what they've done is certain menus that you would use a lot, like for instance, the material manager is now kind of hidden, right? So basically they're all on these corners. So you have material manager, the asset browser, you have your timeline down here, and then you have this one, which I never use, your coordinate manager. I just never use it. And then, but you have those and they're hidden. So what happens is when you click on them, it opens up your material manager. And this is really nice because now this material manager isn't always down here, and you don't have to have a separate layout to like find it and everything, and or to bring it up or to save yourself space. You can just say, hey, I need it, and then you tuck it away after you don't need it. Now the timeline is probably for me the coolest one because I always am going back and forth from the timeline to the viewport, or I just need one or the other, or I need both. And I really, really, really like that I can just hit this button and bring it up. I mean, it's awesome. And it also remembers like how big it was, right? So it remembers that I went from here to here. Now, this kind of goes back to one of the hates, but this does remind me of something that really is annoying, and I still make this mistake a lot. So this button right here for the timeline looks like this, right? It's a little keyframe. All right. Now, what I find myself doing a lot when I want to close it is I hit this button. I hit this button all the time because I'm like, it just feels like, right, it was at the top and now it's at the bottom, and oh, this one's at the top. It's also blue. So I find myself wanting to hit this button a lot, you know, the keyframe mode or dope sheet or whatever. And I hit this a lot when really I should be hitting this. So once again, another struggle, but ultimately really nice to have this, like super nice in my opinion to have these windows that can kind of fly out. Now I'm not really sure if you can actually make custom ones of these, but if you could, that would be super cool too. All right, so that's the first thing to love, and that's a lot to love because I'm telling you there is a lot of things that they have built in for more space, which we'll get to in just a minute. Now, the next thing to love, and this might seem counterintuitive, is actually something that's in the asset library. Now, what I think is really cool about this is you can come in here and you can basically make anything a template, like anything. So I can come in here and I could take this this model, I could take this camera, this, I could take everything. I could take all this and I can literally just drag it into, let me get to, I already have like a Redshift preset here, but I can just drag it to a folder of my choice. And when I do this, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically make this template for you, right? And you can bring it in and you can use those elements, and you can also combine them into one element. So for instance, what I did with my, I use this dome light all the time, right? I just like, it's like a starter. It has an HDRI that I like. So what I did is I took this dome light and I made it a preset, right? So now when I want this dome light that essentially I deleted, I just hit one button. And when I hit that one button, or maybe I have to drag it in. Again, I'm still learning myself, but when I drag it in, it automatically brings in my dome light and it automatically pipes in the reference object. So it's really cool. There's lots of opportunities to do some really nice things that are time savers, right? Like to not have to keep calling up elements and not have to go back into Windows Explorer or whatever you use, Finder. It's a nice way to save some time. So I find this to be pretty awesome. And what's even cooler is you can go to Windows, customize commands, and then you can say edit palettes, right? And then I can take this icon, like any preset that I've made, and I can just like drag it here. And now, and I have this in my own custom ones. Now, instead of going over here and open up the asset browser and all that, I can just hit this button and all of a sudden I've got what I need. So that's really, really a nice feature of something that, in my opinion, it's a great time saver. And it also just keeps you consistent, and it has you, it helps you find stuff quicker and get to stuff quicker. Okay, now that's the second thing you're gonna love. Now the third thing you're gonna love is something that I think is quite a bit overdue, but honestly, most CG packages I don't even think are close, which is a vector import, right? So let's go ahead and let's make a new project because I just kind of want to start fresh. And then I'm going to bring this window over here, and I just have just a simple outline of the YMA logo here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, all right, it's already saved. So what I want to do is I just want to import this. So let's go File, and let's go ahead and merge the object. And let's go to this one. And what it does is basically when you import, two things happen. You no longer have to save out in Illustrator. You no longer have to save out your thing as a legacy file. So it just works, right? You don't have to save it out as Illustrator version 8. So that's great. And then you have this new option, which is create vector objects. Now, when you create this when you do this and you hit OK, you come in, you see what it does is it of course it brings in your vector object, but also it gives you kind of like this new, I guess, icon, and this new icon gives you new features, right? And so these new features basically, they kind of make it dummy proof. They kind of make it feel like you are just in Illustrator, right? So when you bring it in, you're going to see you have quite a bit of options here, and I will go ahead and give you a tip here. This thing got me, this path spread. I don't know why they do this, but they automatically build it in to have a little bit of path spread. So what happens is when you come in, your objects are slightly offset already, and it's actually a bad thing in my opinion. So beware of that. But you do have the option to offset them. I'm not really sure what the thought process behind that is, but it's kind of interesting. And then you have this, what I think is kind of cool is a couple things. So it's live, right? So if I come here and let me go back over to Illustrator, and if I come here to Illustrator and if I change this color to red like this, and I hit save, and I come back over here and I hit the refresh button, it just automatically makes it red, which is really great in my opinion, because you can just consistently be incorporating changes and not really have to think about it too much. Now, the next cool thing that I think is pretty awesome is you can come in here, and if I come here and if I give this just a white, well, whatever, we'll do a red stroke again just to, oops, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, this. Okay, so we'll give it a red stroke, and then we will make this be like something obnoxious, like let's do like 5, or well, it's not too bad. All right. So now I saved, and I'm going to come back over here, and I just hit the refresh button. Now what I have is I have these strokes that are actually happening here. So I can demonstrate by just showing you if I move the path, they're all separated objects, which is pretty cool. And then if you hit hierarchy, then you can kind of come in and see everything if you want. So that's cool. And what's really crazy is if you come in here, and this is like super hideously ugly, but like this default charcoal pencil, if I come in here and make it this, and I bump up the, let's go to like 8 or something. Oops. Yeah. So it actually respects this, which is pretty insane in my opinion. So if I hit refresh, whoa, maybe not with the, I know what happened. So if we go, if we go to path spread of 0, because what it's doing basically is it's breaking up these how do I explain it? It's breaking up this paint stroke, I guess, into individual objects. But if you turn off the path spread, it actually respects it, which is pretty cool. I think it's kind of interesting that it does that. And then from there, you can do a lot more things with it. I don't want to dive too deep, but I'm just trying to show you that there are options, and it makes your life really easy, to be honest, when it comes to vector. And you don't have to save those stupid legacy files anymore. So now that is the third thing you're going to like. Now, the fourth thing that you are going to like is they have these kind of, once again, it all comes back to space. Space is number one for a reason. So they have these like dynamic palettes. So you'll see when I click on point mode here, if you watch here, this is going to change, right? It's going to change based on what I have selected. So if I go to edge mode or polygon mode, everything kind of changes. So it's dynamic, and everything kind of updates. And by doing that, you're digging through less menus, right? I'm not having to dig through a bunch of menus about point mode and all this stuff. Like I don't have to go into this as much because it's kind of already there. Which is, yeah, I think it's really nice the way that things kind of are flexible, and they can, it saves you time, right? It saves, in my opinion, it saves you time, and it saves you real estate on your screen. And And then so that's the fourth thing you're going to love is basically that the palettes are dynamic, right? And depending upon what you have selected and what mode you're in, your windows are going to rearrange. Now this could be frustrating at first because you'll be like, what the hell? Like my like what I'm used to is gone. And yes and no, I haven't found it to be that frustrating, to be honest. I think it's pretty okay. And the fifth thing is kind of a small thing, to be honest, but it actually does help a lot. And that is these tabs up here. And these tabs to me are such brain savers because I can't tell you how much probably time of my life I've wasted just going into this stupid window and like trying to go through these. So to be able to just click through this is really nice. What I wish I could do, I wish I could just do like an Alt tilde or something and like really toggle through them, but I haven't figured that one out yet. Now, the one thing that I haven't enjoyed with this is I have not enjoyed when you start to get a lot of windows. Like, let me just go and create a few. Or I guess if you have ones with longer names, when you have ones, I have my project files usually are pretty long. You can't really read the name. So what I find myself doing is like hovering over them. And when you hover over them, then they give you the name of, normally they do. Maybe it's because we can see it. That's probably what it is. So if I save this project as something incredibly long, and if I hover over it, yeah. So that's what it is basically. If you can't see the full thing when you hover over it. So this is what I've been running into though, where it's like I want to switch, but I have 20 projects open. I'm like, oh, which one is it? So I also wish I could get like some like color coordination on here, but I'm getting nitpicky. The point is that once again, it's another space saver. It's another time saver to help you just be able to work and not worry about all this bullshit like UI stuff. You know, it just kind of gets you through it. So this is my initial top 5 love and hates of the new R25. My personal opinion of if you're thinking about switching or not thinking about switching, my personal opinion is that you should do it, is that you should just go ahead and bite the bullet. I think that other than the UI crashes here and there, it's pretty stable. I haven't had much not be stable. So if you can get your setup right for that and you don't have the UI crashes, I think that it's worth a switch because it's not going anywhere. They're not going to go backwards. So you might as well bite the bullet and get it done with. Or maybe not. So, but that is my 2 cents. Tell me how you feel and how your experience has been. And I hope that this has been helpful, and I will see you on the next one.